Are you tired of building websites made for AdSense? Build a website that solves a customer problem and then charge that customer a monthly recurring fee. Today's guest is going to share how he's doing just that. It's a business model called SaaS, Software as a Service. Stay tuned to learn all the details. 3 messages before today's interview educates and motivates you. First, if you're a domain name investor, don't you have unique legal needs that require domain name technical know-how and industry experience? That's why you need David Westlow of Wiley Ryan. Go search for David Westlow on DomainSherpa, watch his interview, and you can see for yourself that he can clearly explain issues, can help you with buy-sell agreements, deal with website content issues and UDRP actions, and even help you write your website terms and conditions. David Westlow is the lawyer to call for internet legal issues. See for yourself at newmediaip.com. Second, managing multiple domain name marketplace and auction site accounts is a pain. Inevitably, you forget to sign into one and you lose a great domain, or worse. Now imagine using a single, simple to use and comprehensive control panel to manage all of your accounts. That's Protrata. You can set up search filters, analyze domains, automate bidding, list domain names for sale, buy domains across all major marketplaces. Protrata also has a new semantic engine that builds Google-friendly websites with rich content and network feeds. Sign up at protrata.com to get 20 free credits and start building and monetizing your domains today. Finally, if you have questions about domain names, where should you go to ask them? The answer is dnforum.com. Not only is DN Forum the largest domain name forum in the world, it's the best. You can learn about domain names and the industry, buy and sell domain names, talk about the domain name news that's happening in the industry, and even meet domainers just like yourself. Register for a free DN Forum account and begin advancing your skills and knowledge today. And when you do sign up, send me a friend request so we can connect on DN Forum. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the website where you come to learn how to become a successful domain name entrepreneur and investor directly from the experts. We all know the usual options for producing recurring monthly revenue, like domain name parking, content websites that use AdSense for monetization, and even lead generation websites. But what about SaaS? Spelled S-A-A-S, capital S's, lowercase a's, which is an acronym for Software as a Service. Software as a Service is a business model that has tremendous potential, but requires offering something that satisfies a need or solves a problem of a user. Today, we're joined by someone who's focusing his business on SaaS, Matt Mazur. Matt is the owner of Lightstone Software. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, glad to be here.
So software as a service, it's a business model that I'm sure people have heard of in the past. How do you define that?
So software as a service, it's a pretty simple concept, and I'm sure most people are already familiar with it. Basically, instead of getting your customers to pay you once for whatever you're offering, you're going to get them to pay you on a recurring basis. Kind of like you would subscribe to a magazine and you're going to pay for it monthly or yearly, and they deliver you your magazines. It's the same idea except applied to web applications. So you'll sign up, pay monthly or pay yearly, and you'll get access to the service.
Great. And what are some good examples of SaaS businesses that currently exist?
Sure. So most professional websites these days that are trying to charge customers and they're not physically shipping them products are moving to a SaaS model because you can get some really good revenue if you have the customer base to support it. So for example, Netflix, which a lot of people use, you have to pay monthly to get access to their streaming service. Hulu's another one. There's some other big ones such as HubSpot, which is based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is marketing software, MailChimp, and many, many others.
Yeah, I use them on a regular basis. I use SurveyMonkey for surveys on some of my websites. On one of my websites, I have a little feedback button on the right-hand side that allows people to click something and report a problem with anything that's on the screen. I think I pay $15 a month for that. So those are all great examples of software as a service. How did you select software as a service for your business when you had a bunch of other business models that you could have chosen from?
So And I'll talk about this a little bit more. I've been experimenting with different business models. For example, one of the tools that I run is called Precedent. It's a web-based timeline maker. And for about the first 2 years of its existence, I charged people just once to use it. And I've had a lot of success with that. But basically, they're paying me once, and then they can use it for a week, or they can use it for a few years, which people have been. And there's those people that have been using it for several years. I'm really missing out on a lot of value by not charging them to continue to use it. And so you have to strike this balance where you get people in the door to use it, but then are maximizing the value for the people that are going to be using it long term.
Right. And I suspect that if you charge them a little bit every month, that they're going to look at it as less of a risk than if you charge them more for a one-time fee for their entire life.
Right, exactly. So for Precedent, for example, I was charging them $39 once to sign up for the service. And now with the SaaS model, I'm doing it $14 a month. So I'm making less money upfront from them, but if they stick with it for a while, I'll wind up making more money from my customers long term.
Yeah, excellent. How long have you been offering software as a service?
I've been experimenting with it on and off for about a year now. I'm really just taking the dive into it with my latest products in the last 2 months or so.
Great. Well, we'll be able to ask you some questions and learn what you've learned in the past year and couple of months. How much income do you make from your software as a service websites right now?
So I have a couple different websites. Two of them I'm shutting down, and two of them I'm going to be keeping open. I want to focus on the two that are bringing in money. The two that do bring in money are called Lean Domain Search, which we'll talk about a little bit more. That brings in about $1,500 a month in revenue. And Precedent, the other one, is also bringing in about the same amount, about $1,500 a month. So total I'm bringing in about $3,000 a month right now.
Excellent. So we're going to dig into how you're doing that with the websites that you're currently operating, why you're shutting down your two software as a service websites to focus on those. And we're going to go into all the details of the businesses, how you built them, how you marketed them, how you're monetizing them, what credit card merchant accounts you're using, all those details. But I want to go back in time at this point and find out what you were doing just before you started developing these websites.
Sure. So I've been in the Air Force for about the last 9 years. And I started developing these websites in my spare time on nights and weekends. I've always enjoyed building things, especially on the computer. I got into programming at a young age, and just kind of always in my free time, I gravitated towards building tools and building software for people. And so in the last few years, I got into web development and started building a couple different products, and one led to another. And I found myself now with several different products out there, and I finally am taking the plunge to work on them full time.
Yeah, excellent. And did you study computer science in college or anything?
I did. I got a computer science degree from the Air Force Academy.
Excellent. So you graduated from the Air Force Academy, and then you were an officer for how many years after that?
A little over 5 years. I was stationed at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, and then Hanscom Air Force Base in Massachusetts after that.
Excellent. And what rank did you ascend to?
When I separated last month, I was a captain.
Awesome. All right, Matt. Well, thanks for your years of service. So the first website that you developed in your free time when you were working in the Air Force, what was that first website before you even started charging anything?
Yeah, so the first website I have, which is actually pretty relevant to your audience, was called Domain Pigeon. And it was actually a domain name search tool similar to the Lean Domain Search tool that I have right now. So a little background on that. When I first got into web development, it kind of blew me away how hard it was to find good available domain names. At the time, I didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars on a domain name for my products. So I would go on GoDaddy and type in a name, and it would come back registered. And I got so frustrated because it seemed like it was impossible to find anything good. So I wound up writing some little computer programs on my computer that would generate domain names for me. And that's kind of what Lean Domain Search turned into, my second domain name tool, the one that's active right now. The original domain search tool I had, Domain Pigeon, it basically generated Web 2.0 style domain names and spit them out each day, and people could browse them and select them for their websites. And that was kind of my real first big foray into web development, and it did pretty well, and I kept it going for a little over a year. But eventually I lost interest in it and moved on to other web products and shut it down.
Gotcha. All right, so the audience is going to be watching this. There's a slight delay between the video and the audio. It's not enough to reset the connection or anything, Matt, but I just wanted to point it out in case people are wondering why aren't the words matching up exactly with Matt's mouth. Matt, are you actually plugged into a network on your side?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, right now it seems to be working. I think we're just losing a little bit, losing a couple of frames in the middle. So Domain Pigeon, and I've had the exact same issue. I've had tons of great ideas for different businesses, and whenever I go to look up the idea, somebody has it registered, and it's usually Mike Mann, which pisses me off. MikeMann.com. So, in fact, I was just talking to my father-in-law. We were talking about books a few months ago, and he came up with this great idea, and I'm like, oh, I love that idea. Let me go look it up and look up a domain name, a generic domain name that could be a brandable that sort of matches, and of course it was taken. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs are feeling the exact same frustration that you felt back then. So you came out with DomainPigeon.com, and when you say it was a Web 2.0 offering of available domain names, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I should explain that. So Web 2.0 refers to this era in web development, basically the last few years, where you get all these really fancy, unpronounceable, unspellable domain names. Like, I guess you could say Zynga is one of them. Like, they're really like playful, and if somebody told it to you, you'd have to ask them again, and you would probably not remember how to spell it. And that's the kind of domain names that Domain Pigeon generated. And ReadWriteWeb, a popular website, actually wrote an article about it, and the title was something like "Find Your Perfect Unintelligible Domain Name," just to give you an example of how people perceived it. But a lot of people want domain names like that. They want these playful, creative names, and that's the kind of web domain names that Domain Pigeon specialized in. But
gotcha. So they were brandable.
Really,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, exactly. They were brandable domain names, but I really didn't want to use them for myself, and I really didn't like the quality. I don't think Web 2.0 style domain names are particularly good, especially if they're difficult for people to pronounce or difficult for people to spell, because it's going to make it hard to market, and it's going to make it hard for people to find your website. So Lean Domain Search, the tool that I run right now, is kind of my second attempt at making a good domain search tool, and I think the results of this tool are much, much better than Domain Pigeon ever was.
Okay, so I want to understand how you transitioned to leandomainsearch.com from domainpigeon.com, but one more question. When you would actually come up with, so I assume you wrote an algorithm that came up with these Web 2.0 domain names that were sometimes difficult to pronounce, and then would you ping it off of the GoDaddy server using their API to figure out if it was available and then display them to the user?
Yeah, so you can run whois queries on the domain names, and based on the results, you can tell whether it's registered or available or not. So that's actually, it's very slow to do that. It takes a few seconds to check one domain name, and I moved to a different method to do it with Lean Domain Search, which I can talk about. But
sure.
Yeah, so basically for Domain Pigeon, I would come up with this list of domain names on my computer and then put it online for people to access. With Domain Pigeon, it's kind of different, because you can go to Lean Domain Search and type in any word or phrase, and then in real time it will go and figure out for thousands of domain names in a few seconds which of those are available and which of those are registered.
Sure. Okay, so you would come up with names, you would put them on domainpigeon.com, it would check the whois, which would take a couple of seconds, and then when somebody wanted to register one of those domain names, would they click on it and it would take them to a registrar and you would receive a commission?
Yeah, exactly. So for Domain Pigeon and now Lean Domain Search, you have a list of search results. If you click on one of the search results, it will double check that it's still available, and then it will present you with a button for GoDaddy or whatever registrar you choose. You can then click that, and if you wind up purchasing it, I get a percentage of that revenue. So for example, GoDaddy, which is where I get most of my revenue from, they pay about 30% for any sale. So if you go and buy just one domain name for $12, I'm not going to make a lot of money off of that, right? But GoDaddy, as you probably know, is very good at upselling. So you go there to buy a domain name, and you wind up leaving with 5 domain names and 4 years of managed hosting, and you wind up spending hundreds of dollars. So enough people go and pay a lot of money that it winds up adding up to a decent amount for me at the end of the month.
Definitely. And then you don't have to do any of that upselling. You can basically just send them over to GoDaddy. They're happy to give you a commission on anything that gets sold because you're sending them a customer, and then they're in charge of all the upsell.
Exactly.
Great.
So,
all right. So
I'm kind of the middle.
What you were. Go ahead.
I was just saying I'm kind of the middleman in this, right, and that works out well.
Definitely. Yeah, again, sorry for talking over you, Matt. There's a slight delay at certain times. I'm going to try and wait until you're completely done before I ask my next question. So I understand Domain Pigeon. Did you start developing leandomainsearch.com, sort of overlapping in time with Domain Pigeon, realizing that you wanted to advance your algorithm? Or did you completely shut down Domain Pigeon and then start with Lean Domain Search?
The latter, actually. I wound up shutting Domain Pigeon down and working on several other projects in between. Precedent, which is one of the other ones that I have running currently. Another one called Lean Designs, which is a web design tool. Another one called Lucid Tracker, which is this live tracking tool, which I can talk about a little more later. But I always had this itch that I could do this domain search better. And for each of those intermediate projects, I had to find domain names for them. And so I was running into the same problem that I originally had, where I have this idea for a product, but I can't find a good domain name to go with it. And I wound up spending a lot of time. And so these original algorithms that I wrote for Domain Pigeon to come up with domain names, I wound up tweaking them here and there. And over the course of a few years, the algorithms got pretty good, to the point where I had friends that would email me with what topics they wanted to create products for. I would run them through the algorithm on my computer and then send them back the results. And they really encouraged me. They said, hey, this is really good. Maybe you should consider getting back into the domain search business with another tool, because I think this could be really popular. And that's kind of what spurred me to start working on Lean Domain Search several years after I had already shut down Domain Pigeon.
Gotcha. And are you working full-time in another job, Matt, that you're doing this on the side, or is this your full-time job building these websites that are based off of software as a service model?
As of about a month ago, it's my full-time job. So I took the plunge, left the Air Force, and I'm now pursuing this full-time, which I'm really excited about.
Awesome. All right. So leandomainsearch.com is your current domain name spinner, as a lot of people like to talk about it. You put in a word, you crank the handles, and it spins out a bunch of different brandable or generic words that can be used to name your business or name your website, and it comes out with a lot of different options. And so I've actually gone to Lean Domain Search, and if I type in red, for example, it'll come back with Clean Red, Uber Red, Ideal Red, Finance Red, and if I click on the name itself, it'll say checking domain, Twitter, and trademark availability. And so, for example, financered.com is still available. It's available on Twitter, and it does not appear to be trademarked, which it looks like you plug into Trademarkia in order to determine. And
exactly.
it came back with 360 available .coms containing the word red out of 3,300 available results if I upgrade to a premium account.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into the business model for Lean Domain Search. So up until a few weeks ago, I offered all the search results for free. So if you go and type red and it finds 2,500 available domain names that contain the word red, it's going to show you all 2,500, and you're free to browse them. You can sort them by popularity or length or alphabetically. You could filter them and do whatever you want with this full long list of results. So you've got a lot of options. Yeah. And but I started looking at, is there a way that I can potentially make more off the people that want more results, or more off the people that are going to be using this heavily? And so I kind of moved to this SaaS model, the subscription as a service model, where I'll let you look at the search results for free. Like, you searched and you saw 360 results. So that's kind of the number that I chose to show people for free. You can go and search on there, and it will show you the top 360 results without without charging you anything. And for most people, that's going to work just fine. It's sorted by popularity based on the keyword it pairs your search term with. So generally the top 360 are going to be pretty good. But for a number of people, they're going to want an even wider selection of domain names to choose from. And so if you want to explore the full list of results, which is usually several thousand domain names instead of just the top 360, then you've got to upgrade to one of my paid plans.
Gotcha.
So I made that change a few weeks ago, and I don't have much of a sample size yet because it's still early, but tentatively it looks like it's going to increase my revenue by about 50 to 100%.
Wow.
So it's been pretty successful so far.
Definitely. And that's basically a migration of revenue coming from commissions at GoDaddy to directly charging the customer for those options.
Exactly.
Well, but also getting the commissions.
Yeah, exactly. So I still make money off the commissions, and you can kind of imagine this spectrum where on one side I offer all the domain names for free and I just make money with affiliate revenue, and on the other side I charge people to use it. I don't give you any results for free. But I don't really want to do that because I want people to get a feel for what the product's like, to make sure they're comfortable with it. So I kind of choose this middle ground where I give you some of the results for free, but if you want all of them, you have to pay. And we typically call that freemium, free plus premium. And a lot of businesses use that, like MailChimp and many others. So
sure, where you can actually use the service and see how great it is and then commit to paying for additional service. So 360 domain names that I can currently browse through without being registered. That's a lot of domain names. Are you afraid that people are just going to find the exact one they want and then not pay for the premium service?
They might, and honestly, I'm happy with that because if they wind up registering one of those, I'm going to make some money off it too. Now, some folks have recommended that I test that number. So instead of doing 360, maybe I do 100. What kind of effect is that going to have on the number of people upgrading? And moving forward, that's something that I want to test out.
Yeah, because what if you offer just 10 domain names and they're phenomenal, but, before I commit to a new website and a business, I want to make sure I do my due diligence and look at all the available options. So while the 10 that you provided have 3 that I love, boy, isn't it worth $79 or whatever it is just to take a look at the full list before I make a commitment?
Yeah, maybe. And that is definitely something I want to test in the coming weeks and months.
Excellent.
It'll be interesting to see the results too.
Definitely. So how do you plan to test the number that you offer of domain names for free without people paying and registering?
So there's a methodology called A/B testing. Basically, you show 2 different versions of the same page, but just with minor tweaks, and then you measure what impact that has on something. So, for example, I can show half the people that are on the site 360 results and half 10, and then I can measure of each of those groups how many are making it to the payment stage and actually paying me money. And by doing that, by showing over the same time period the same set of users, just splitting them in half and showing them different results, I can get a pretty good feel for what impact that's going to have on the subscription rates. So it might turn out that showing 10 increases my subscription rate a lot. I might want to be decreasing it a lot because maybe people are just pissed off that I'm only showing them 10 and not showing them the other 6,000 that are out there. And also, there's other repercussions of doing this too, because if I only show 10, I think people are going to be a lot less willing to share it with their friends, for example. Maybe they're going to be a lot less willing to write about it in blog posts. I make about half of my traffic now is from direct referrals and through blog posts. So if I limit it to 10 or just charge for it completely, I think I'm going to see those numbers plummet. And that's going to have an impact on my affiliate revenue as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and you have to make sure you do it carefully and interpret the results correctly.
Definitely. And is it difficult to program your system such that if I were to come to your website today, you only show me 10 versus if I show up tomorrow, you show me 360 results? Is that difficult to do so that you can separate those 2 pools of people and measure them appropriately?
There's a number of services and tools that let you do that on your site. I would recommend going to something like visualwebsiteoptimizer.com. They're very popular, and so is another one called Optimizely. Those are kind of the two big players right now. Google used to have a tool called Website Optimizer that let you do it, but I think they're kind of phasing it out right now, and they're going to integrate some sort of simpler version into Google Analytics. But if you're serious about A/B testing, I would check out Optimizer or Visual Website Optimizer. I've always wondered too, like people who park domain names, they probably get a lot of traffic over the course of time and through all their sites. It'd be interesting to know whether they're A/B testing their home pages because they could potentially increase their traffic by a lot. I've heard of people that all they did was change the color of a button on their web page, and they doubled their conversion rates to signups or whatever it is. And that's not guaranteed, of course, but you can get pretty big wins by A/B testing. Even if you only get like a 5% gain or a 10% gain, you throw enough of those together, and they can make pretty significant impact to your bottom line at the end of the year.
Definitely.
So,
and especially if you have, say, 1 million people coming to your website, a 10% gain in profit could be significant. But it makes me wonder, how much traffic do you have to leandomainsearch.com that you're able to then do A/B testing? Do you need a minimum threshold, or can you do it with any number of visitors per month?
You can do it with any number, but it's going to take longer for you to be sure that the results are good. So, for example, I have 10 people coming to my website. I can show 5 of them one thing and 5 of them something else and measure the impact. But you're not really going to – you'll have a number at the end of that, but you won't know whether the number is really statistically valid. So maybe it was just due to chance that one happened to be the other. One resulted, not the other. So the more traffic you have, generally the quicker it's going to be. You could also, instead of just testing 2 things, maybe you could test 5 things. And it's just going to vary based on your traffic and how much you want to test. Visual Website Optimizer actually has a calculator on their site where you can plug in your traffic and your estimated conversion rate, how much you think it will improve, and it will actually spit out like a length, a duration that it thinks your test will take.
Excellent. And so if I go to Visual Website Optimizer, and let's say that I want to use Visual Website Optimizer for a SaaS business that I have, or maybe I just want to use it on DomainSherpa so that I can optimize the number of people that are opting into my newsletter list. Put the newsletter sign up box as a pop-up, or put it up at the top, or put it up on the right-hand side, which is the current place where I have it. And I want to measure that. Well, I understand that Visual Website Optimizer will actually allow me to move things around. I think I've heard some interviews of the owner before. But what about a site like yours where somebody actually has to come and do a search and you present the results? It's not something like static pieces that I want to move around. Yours is a functioning website where people may want to, look at the results and type in a different search. How do you do that with a third-party service like visualwebsiteoptimizer.com?
That's a great question, and admittedly, it's a little bit more complicated for a service like mine because, like you said, it's kind of integrated into the results and the rendering. So I websites built on Ruby on Rails, which is a coding framework, if you will, and there's libraries out there for Ruby on Rails that make it easy to do A/B tests behind the scenes. So it's not just testing the positioning of a newsletter sign up or changing the color of a button, but I can really get into the weeds and adjust the number of search results, for example. And the one I use is called A-Bingo by Patrick McKenzie. It's a A/B testing tool that has worked really well for me.
Excellent. And then is there just some way that you can tag a user that subscribes with, what test result they were, the default versus, a different layout?
So when you run an A/B test, the A/B testing tool that you use is going to identify, usually via cookies, which user is in which group. And then when they complete whatever you're tracking, like signing up for a newsletter or paying you for your SaaS service, it will trigger an event which looks at which group they were in and then keeps track of that. And then you can go and see a report at the end. This is how many times we showed this, and this is how many people in each group signed up. And you can get a really good indication that way of what is going to work better long-term for your service.
Excellent. All right. So I come to your website. I do a search. I want to actually pay you money. Either you offer a couple of different options right now. You have a one-time fee for, I think it's $79.
Right.
for let's see here, for 2 months is what it is. Is that right?
Yep, 2 months for $79, or you can pay yearly for $199. So it's kind of a discounted rate that I offer people yearly. It was a little tricky coming up with those two plans and then the pricing for them. And I actually started out the pricing much higher than I did when I initially transitioned to this SaaS model, but I didn't really get a lot of uptake on that. So for example, I was charging $299 for the people that wanted to use it short term, and I think $99 per month for people that wanted to use long term. But I didn't really get a lot of takers there, and I think that's just the nature of my traffic. I've got a lot of startup folks who don't have a lot of money that they want to spend, a lot of individual web developers who are just starting a website. They don't want to pay $300 for this tool. I mean, maybe some of them will, but I've had a lot more success by lowering the price to $79 for 2 months or $199 for a year. And I've had people sign up in both of those groups.
Wow. Yeah, when you're throwing out your initial pricing, I would have thought, as an entrepreneur myself who likes to look at different names and think about different opportunities, that's a lot of money. Where I can go and pull down a list under DomainSherpa for the buying category and look at domain name spinners, and there's probably like 15 on my list, of which I'm going to list yours, of course, because it's a fantastic tool. But how do you differentiate yourself from these other offerings that are out there? It seems like almost every registrar has a domain name spinner themselves because they want to provide as many opportunities to you as possible.
That's true, but I found that a lot of the other domain search tools out there, and the registrars especially, the recommendations are not very good. So for example, if you go to GoDaddy and type in something and it winds up being registered, the results that they return are really not very good. They're filled with hyphens. It's maybe the word you typed in spelled backwards, which is unpronounceable. Again, it's got dashes in it, crazy results. Yeah. And like you said, there's a lot of other tools out there too, but I think the quality of the results on lean domain search is so good that it's worth paying a premium for. And especially if you look at how long it takes somebody who doesn't want to buy a premium domain name to find a good site, a good domain name for their product, you could potentially save a lot of time by using a tool like lean domain search to find a product name. So yeah, that was kind of my idea going in. I would charge higher because the results are so good. And again, people didn't pay at the higher price point, but they are paying at kind of the medium price point. So people are clearly getting value out of it. And again, because of the way I've structured it, where you can try it out for free, you know what you're going to expect. There's no surprises to these people that are upgrading what kind of search results they're getting.
Great. So. Okay, so we talked about the business model and how you've changed it from, the domainpigeon.com days to lean domain search, and how you originally charged more for the service and now you're charging less, and you're playing with that, and you're also making money through the commissions. How do you actually get people to come to your website, Matt? How do people find lean domain search?
So lean domain search, I've had a lot of success with referrals and direct traffic. I've got hundreds of testimonials from people saying how good the site is and how it's helped them find product names for their website. And people have shared it on Twitter. They've written blog posts about it. And I get about 3/4 of my traffic just through people sharing it with each other over social media and through blog posts. It's been written up on the Next Web and SEO Moz. It's been mentioned on. And yeah, I get a lot of traffic that way because people are finding it useful. They like what I've done with the site. And I get about 1/3 of my traffic right now through search, but I'm not really appearing on the first page of the search results right now because it's a relatively new site. I'm kind of on like the 3rd page of results. Hopefully over time I start ranking well for the terms like domain search. But right now it works pretty well just doing referral and word of mouth.
Great.
Now, in terms of marketing it, I've had more success than anything by writing good content, writing good blog posts that people share. So for example, I wrote one blog post a few months back where I looked at all the modifiers for the word that you type in. So for example, if you type in red and it pairs it with Uber, red, clean, red, et cetera, et cetera. I did this search of all the domain names out there and looked at which of those prefixes and suffixes are the most popular to pair with your keyword. And it turns out that my is the most popular prefix and online is the most popular suffix, which you might have guessed. But
Yeah.
so I did this, I came up with these results, and I wrote a big blog post about it. It got picked up by a lot of domain name websites. And I've written several others similar to that, and they generally do very well because it's unique content. It's content that the audience that's coming to Lean Domain Search will find useful, and that's generally what I'd recommend to anybody looking to market their site is create content for your audience that they are interested in. One mistake I've made with previous websites is on the blogs. I was just kind of blogging about updates to the site, like little improvements to the site here and there. It's easy to do. I updated this and this, and the users that you already have might find that interesting, but you're not really going to get a lot of new users by just reporting little updates to the site. So write content, which will help you with SEO, but it will also get people to share your website, which will drive traffic to you.
Definitely. So I can see that you have a blog on Lean Domain Search. If I go down to the bottom, you have a blog link there, and there it seems like you're writing full-length articles about updates or about pricing or about suffixes or prefixes to words that are on the tool. So you're using the blog as a way to bring in links to your website, which will help drive your website to the top of the search engine rankings as well.
Exactly.
And bring in referral traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And then you also have a blog over at Matt Mazur, MattMazur.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's kind of a more personal blog. It's not directly related to any specific product. It's where I've kind of written about some of the products I've built in the past and lessons learned on those. But it's tricky, if you have a personal blog and you have a blog for your product, and you have this great content you want to write, do you post it on your personal blog or do you post it on your product blog? Because I simultaneously want people to go to my personal blog and contact me and read my stuff, but I also want to drive traffic to my products. So you've kind of got to decide where you want to post the content, where you want to drive traffic. So, for example, I haven't posted a lot to my personal blog lately because I kind of decided that if I'm going to write something that's going to get a lot of traffic, I might as well have it go into one of my products where I'm going to actually make money off of it. So.
Definitely. Yeah. And how much traffic do you have on the leandomainsearch.com website right now?
I get about 9,000 uniques a month right now.
Nice.
I get about 1,000 searches a day by about 250 to 300 uniques. So each person makes on average 4 to 5 searches, and like I said, I get about 1,000 searches a day, 30,000 searches a month right now.
Great. And are you using PayPal as a merchant account, or how do you actually take the person who's interested in paying for your service and then extract the money from them?
So this great new service launched recently. It's called Stripe. STRIPE, stripe.com, and they let you accept money on your website, directly on your website, without having to set up a fancy merchant account or anything like that. I've done that in the past. It is a major pain to set up a merchant account and get all that going. Stripe makes it kind of ridiculously easy to accept payments on your website. It's a little more technical to go into how they do it, but basically, you set up SSL, so you have HTTPS on your site, so the traffic is encrypted. And then via JavaScript, they'll accept your user's credit card information, send it back to their servers, charge them, and then send back a little confirmation to you. So the user's credit card information never actually touches your servers, so you don't have to go through all the crazy PCI compliance rules and things like that. And, a lot of startups are moving to Stripe because they do make it so easy, and it's cheap too. They just charge, I think it's 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. There's no recurring charges or anything like that. And a big reason why I am experimenting with my pricing now is because Stripe does make it so easy. So I'd encourage anybody that's looking to charge their customers to check out Stripe.
Definitely. And so it's an alternative to PayPal, where PayPal's pretty easy. They've done a good job making it somewhat transparent and walking you through the process to take money from people, whether it's a one-time charge or a recurring charge. But at PayPal, they require you to sign up for an account, and that turns off a lot of people.
It does. And Precedent, the web-based timeline maker that I also run, for most of its existence, I've used PayPal. And people know PayPal, they're comfortable with that, but there's also several extra steps in it. You click on upgrade, then it takes you to the PayPal sign-in screen, you put in your credentials, and then it shows you a summary of what you want to buy, and then you click buy, and it takes you back to the site. So there's like a lot of steps in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have data to back this up, but I think people would get to PayPal and decide for whatever reason they don't want to go through the whole process, or like you said, maybe they don't have an account. I think they do have an option now where you don't have to have an account, you can pay with a credit card, but still it's extra steps. Whereas now you can go right on the site, just type in your credit card information, hit submit, and you're done. And every step along the way where you simplify things, it's going to increase the conversion rate and your traffic along the way too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, as soon as that came out of my mouth, I should have clarified it. If you make a one-time purchase, I believe you don't need to sign up for an account, that you can enter in your credit card information. But if you want recurring payments, then they actually require you to sign up for an account, and that's what I was referring to. So Stripe sounds like a great opportunity, using JavaScript over HTTPS to communicate to them and come back, a much more transparent process to the user. Does the credit card payment that shows up on their statement actually show your business name, Matt, or does it show Stripe, or how does that show up?
Stripe is really elegant. So basically on the Stripe website, on the settings page for your site, there's a little text box where you say, and they ask, what do you want it to show on your user's credit card statement? So I have one account for Precedent, my timeline tool where it says precedent.com. I've got one for Lean Domain Search where it says Lean Domain Search. It's really seamless. It's very well thought out. Yeah. They've got, I feel like I'm selling Stripe here.
I know. You should get a commission for it. You're doing a great job.
They've got an environment
and I think a lot of people are tired of PayPal. You know, PayPal has pretty stringent requirements. If you suddenly start selling a ton of products, they will shut down your account, or they will lock it down and not pay you the money that you've made. And I haven't heard anything about Stripe doing similar type of activities.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of horror stories about PayPal. I think they got a new CEO recently, and he's trying to improve things, but I have not heard one bad thing about Stripe. I have not had any issues with them, nor did I with PayPal, but I just love how easy Stripe is to integrate into your site. Yeah. I highly recommend it.
So we talked about the business model. We talked about how you basically doubled your revenue by moving to a SaaS model where you're charging subscriptions now, in addition to the commissions. What are your goals for the future, Matt? How big do you think you can make it?
So for Lean Domain Search, it's kind of funny because I see people on Twitter all the time saying, hey, I'm trying to find a domain name. This is impossible, and I don't want to buy a premium domain name. So I usually send them a message saying, hey, check out Lean Domain Search. And the response I get a lot of the time is, wow, this is fantastic. Thank you so much. And so for Lean Domain Search, and probably a lot of other products out there, it's like I feel like I barely scratched the surface of the audience that could benefit from it. And if I can do a better job of marketing it and getting the word out there to everybody that can benefit from Lean Domain Search, I think I would do pretty well. I have a friend who runs this bingo card creator website. It's for teachers, and he said when he started this thing, he thought he would never get more than like 10,000 people using it. He thought there's such a small audience for it, and now he's got several 100,000 users, and he says he still feels like he hasn't even scratched like 1% of the people that could use it. That's kind of what I've learned too, is the world's a pretty big place. There's a lot of people who are out there searching for tools, and if you're solving a problem and you can get that solution to your customers effectively, you're going to do pretty well. And so it's my challenge as the creator of Lean Domain Search and these other tools is to market it better and find ways to reach the people who need this tool. So again, that's what I'm going to be focusing on a lot in the coming months. And also, one thing I do want to do with Lean Domain Search is, right now it just focuses on available domain names, but there are going to be people that are willing to buy premium domain names. They're going to want that higher quality, and they're going to have the money to pay for it. So why not include those in the search results as well? And so I'm starting to look at ways I can incorporate premium domain names into the search results. Maybe a little section up top where it shows you the best ones along with their prices. And if people want that, then they're going to have the option to do it. And so I'd really like to build up a large collection of premium domain names that I can include in relevant searches too.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see where it goes.
2 years ago, when I was preparing to launch DomainSherpa, I was using all of the name spinners. I wasn't aware of Lean Domain Search at the time. I'm not sure if it was around 2 years ago, but I tried all of them looking for a domain and then trying to find the social media handles that were available for the domain also, because that's a big consideration nowadays. You want something that matches on the social networks to the domain name.
Yep.
And it was difficult to do. I ended up having to reach out to owners of the domain names to make the purchase directly. And I think I ended up buying DomainSherpa.com for $500 because the Twitter and one reason was because the Twitter and the Facebook handles were still available. So that would be tremendously beneficial if you incorporated one of the or many of the domain name marketplaces in. Do you know which marketplaces you're targeting to be included in the search?
I don't yet. I just started looking at it, and different ones, it seems, make it easier than others to take their data and use it on your own site. So I still need to do some additional research. You know, it's kind of a funny story. Sherpa, the word Sherpa, is one of the keywords that I pair with your search results. So had DomainSherpa.com been available and you had searched for domain on Lean Domain Search, DomainSherpa would have been one of the available results. So.
Yep, Sherpa is a good one. There was Marketing Sherpa. I think there's one other big Sherpa site out there. Anyways, we get Sherpas like you to come on and teach us different topics. So back to marketing. You said that you mentioned a tactic that I thought was very useful. So you do searches on Twitter for anybody using the word domain, and then if you see people confused about or having difficulty purchasing domains, you will actually reach out to them with an @ username and say, hey, check out leandomainsearch.com?
Exactly. So I use a tool called TweetDeck for the Mac, which lets you plug in like certain search terms, and it will show you who's typing those in. So I found I tried domain search, but you wind up getting a lot of garbage results with just domain search. So I actually do find a domain name right now, and usually between probably about 20 people per week are going on Twitter and saying, man, I can't find a domain name. And then I see it, and I'm like, hey, go check out Lean Domain Search. And so that drives people to the site that way.
And can you set up
TweetDeck?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead. I said usually people are pretty appreciative because they're venting their frustrations and you're reaching out to them. Now, one thing I try to do is not to make it seem spammy. So like I try to tailor each tweet to the message that the person sent out. So it is kind of customized. I try to put the people's first name in there, saying, hey, Max or whatever. That way people know it's not spammy, which is something I'd recommend to try this.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Is there a way to automate TweetDeck to look for that search and then reply back with the result to save you time? But you're saying that it's much more appreciated by recipients if they get a customized message to their specific request. And then you can filter out the ones that aren't actually asking for search tools.
Exactly. And I'm not sure exactly Twitter's terms of service, but they might have rules against automatically sending messages to people. So I try to make it as less spammy as I can. That way it's less likely to be in trouble.
So you mentioned blogging, which is a way for other people to find interesting content, write their own content, link back to your content. You talked about outreach on Twitter. You talked about rising up the search rankings, that you're maybe on page 3, and I'm not sure what people are searching for, but you're probably targeting a host of different topics by writing those blogs and hoping that they come to leandomainsearch.com. What else are you doing to drive more people to the website to get them into the funnel? So, Matt, what else do you do to market the website and get more traffic?
So if I could talk about Precedent for a second, there might be some good lessons learned there. So with Precedent, again, it's this web-based timeline maker. People go to the website. It's a lot of students who are using it to make projects for their classes. It's a lot of teachers who use it to make aids for their lesson plans. Also have some businesses using it, project managers, etc. But for Precedent, I have different sharing options, and if you want, you can share the timeline you create. And then I've got this shared timeline page, which people can then go browse if they want to explore other people's timelines. But one benefit of this, which I didn't really appreciate until recently, is that every time somebody shares one of their timelines on this page, it gets indexed by Google. And over time, all this content that people are creating winds up ranking in Google search results, and people wind up linking to it. So for example, if you search for Revolutionary War timeline on Google, one of Precedent's timelines will appear in the results, and you'll wind up coming to Precedent. And it's this kind of magical thing where I am not writing any blog posts, I'm not creating any content on my own, but my users are creating content. And with thousands of users creating content, it's like they're doing all my SEO for me by creating all this amazing content. And I think that's really had a huge impact on my rankings over time. And even in the last like 3 months or so, I've gone from the third page of results for a lot of stuff to the top 3 for a lot of search terms. And I attribute a lot of that partially to some of the changes Google has been making, but a lot due to this content strategy. I've heard people refer to it before as scalable content creation, where your users are creating content, which is getting indexed by Google, which is driving more users and more content. So it's like I said, it's really this magical thing if you can get it to work where you don't have to create content on your own, but your users are creating content for you.
Right.
And if you can find a way to make that work for your business, I highly recommend trying it out.
Definitely. Yeah, user-generated content, or UGC. And the beauty about it also is that many of those students and teachers will link to their Precedent, and I should spell that for the audience. It's Preceden, Precedent timelines, from their .edu accounts, from their blogs, from their open syllabuses. So that drives even more links back to your website, which then increases your authority and moves you up the rankings, not only for your homepage and your 5 or 10 pages that run the site, but also for those long-term tales like Civil War history, where they do the timeline of everything that happened during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a fantastic way to use users to generate the content and get links back to your website. What do you do for lean domain search in a similar type of fashion?
So I've been trying to find ways where I kind of take that idea of getting automatically created content and somehow integrate it into lean domain search. The problem is there's not a lot of user-generated content. And I could, like, for example, some people have recommended to me that I look at what terms people are searching for and go register domain names related to that. That's really, I think it's called domain name front running, which is really shady, and I don't want to get into it. And I kind of have this strict policy where I'm not going to use anything you search for to, I'm not going to share that with anybody else. So it's hard to do user-generated content when the only content people are creating is something I want to keep private, right?
Right.
But I think there is a lot more I can do in terms of automatically generating content related to domain names. You asked before how I did the domain search for Domain Pigeon, and I mentioned I did it through Whois. Again, Whois is slow though, so for lean domain search, I kind of took this other route where I look at the .com zone file, which is this massive file that lists all the registered domain names, and I've come up with ways to query that to determine whether something is available or not. And that's why it's much quicker than doing the standard Whois search. But through doing that, I've come up, there's a lot of like really interesting results. Like I mentioned before, you can figure out the best prefixes and suffixes, and you can also figure out like what the most popular keywords are, looking at all the registered domain names. So there's a lot of interesting analysis I can do, and I'm thinking maybe there's a way I can automate that so that, for example, I think it might be interesting month to month to see what topics people are registering domain names for, like what's rising. So maybe with the election coming up, more people are registering Obama or Romney related domain names. And I want to come up with a way to automate that process so I can spit out these reports showing over time trends in domain name registrations. And maybe I can automate that, and that can be kind of my automatic content strategy, which will get indexed and people will share and things like that. So, but it's definitely a lot trickier with lean domain search than precedent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you could show that binders, domain names with binders is suddenly higher this month than last month. And so one of the things I was thinking when you were talking, Matt, was you could create indexed pages of the keyword searches that people were doing. So if I come to your website and I type in binders, you can show me what looks like a static URL to a search with the word binders. But if your privacy policy says that you don't really reveal anything, even though it's just a keyword search and you're showing 360 results, I'm not sure if that's a viable option. So you're still searching for ways to, within privacy safe sentiment, display user-generated content.
Exactly. And kind of like you said, sometimes you'll search for binder, and obviously who cares about the search results for there, but you get a lot of people like searching for their own name, for example, and it would be hard to automatically filter those out to let those people maintain their privacy. So it's not really a road I want to go down. I'd like to find a way to create that kind of content without divulging what people are searching for.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Google for a minute. Did you notice any changes after Google did their latest algorithm, or any of their latest algorithm change? Penguin, Panda, the exact match domain algorithm update. Any changes to your websites that you noticed?
Now, like I said, Precedent, the timeline website, it has done really well the last few months. I use this tool called SERPFox, SERPFOX, to track my search engine rankings over time. And since I started tracking it in May or so, I've gone for Precedent from the third, fourth page of results to across the board first page of results. I'm usually about 3 or 4 for most timeline terms right now. And it's hard with Google making so many changes to know exactly which of those has contributed. And also, I've got more people creating content. So you've got all these things going on at once, and it's hard to attribute any of those to the increase in search result rankings. I'd like to think, though, that the site does have a lot of quality content on it, and it's getting rewarded for that. And maybe some of the things that ranked higher for timelines in the past are no longer getting ranked as highly because of some of these quality changes that Google has been making.
Yeah. Okay. SERPFox.com. I've used SERPBuddy.com, and I think they have a freemium model as well, where they'll track a certain number of websites with again search phrases and they email me, I think, per week. Is SERPFox.com the same, a freemium type model, or is it free, or they?
It's not freemium. They don't have any free version, but it's very affordable. I think their cheapest plan, which I'm on, costs $10 a month and lets you track up to 50 keywords, which for my purposes is all I need. And they have some higher tiered ones. I want to say their highest one is maybe $199 a month, and it lets you track up to 2,000 keywords. But for me, $10 a month is great. I was using SEO Moz before. I think that was $99 a month. So
it's expensive.
Expensive, and I wasn't really using all of the premium features that they offered. Really, I was going there checking my rankings, right? But I don't need this rocket ship to just track my rankings. Something like SERPFox was much better suited for me.
Definitely. So where do you run your, right now you've got 4 businesses, you're going to be shutting down 2 of them soon, which we're going to talk about. You've got 2 others running, and then you've got your own website, Mazur.com. Do you run these off of a single server? Do you have a hosting account with multiple VPS accounts? How do you run it?
So for Ruby on Rails, so there's a programming language called Ruby. There's a framework that makes it easy to do web development with Ruby called Ruby on Rails. That's what I use to do all of my sites. There's a site called Heroku, which is specifically for Well, it started out as Ruby on Rails hosting. Now they've branched off into other frameworks as well. But I use Heroku to host all of my web apps. MattMazur.com, my personal blog, is hosted on some GoDaddy shared server. It's it's a small thing, but Heroku makes it really easy to manage and host Ruby on Rails applications. Heroku is based on the Amazon cloud, and so it's really seamless. Most of the time, it works really well. If I get a lot of traffic, for example, like with a click of a button, I can scale it to handle that traffic, and then when the traffic dies off, I can scale it back down. It makes it really easy. And I haven't had much downtime, but for example, yesterday Amazon had some problems in I think it was
North
West
Virginia.
Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some problems with one of their data centers, and all of my sites went down for like 6 hours. And there was not a whole lot I could do because I was completely reliant on them. But other than the occasional downtime like that, I've had a lot of success with them. I love how easy it is to host Ruby on Rails sites with Heroku and Amazon.
Yeah. Well, you were in good company yesterday. GitHub, I think, went down. Heroku, Reddit.com went down also. So, yeah, it's hard to say, hey, yes, I'm down and I'm small, but Reddit went down too. Come on. All right, let me ask you one question. You've got lightstonesoftware.com. That is the overarching company for these web apps that you're developing, the software subscriptions as a service, software as a service. Do you do consulting for others that want to develop their own software as a service business as well?
I don't right now. Right now, I really want to just focus on my software as a service businesses. Like I said, I left my day job about a month ago to focus on these. And I'd like to devote my full energy to getting them off the ground, ideally to a point where I can make a good monthly income and do that long term. Maybe down the road I can get into some sort of consulting to either supplement my income or do that full time, but not right now. So.
Great. All right. So I want to talk about precedent. Precedent. I keep mispronouncing it. Precedent.
A lot of people. Yeah.
Preceden, precedent. The easiest way to make a timeline. Now, I didn't even know I had a need to make a timeline, Matt.
Yeah, a lot of people don't, but then they see it and they're like, hey, this could be interesting.
Well, so, and you've got some fantastic examples of why people may want to make timelines. We've mentioned a couple of them here. Teachers may want to share timelines of historical events with their students. Managers may want to plot their business milestones, which I've wanted to do, and I've put it on a blog, and it doesn't necessarily have the same sort of impact. Genealogy research may want to do this. I'm reading this from your webpage. Criminal justice professors create timelines showing events leading up to a crime. Authors create plot and character timelines so that they can organize it probably in their own mind. Job hunters may want to use precedent to visualize their employment history. Lots of great ideas. What was your original idea to create this service?
So the one use case which I think everybody can relate to, and it's actually the example on my homepage, is a biography showing. Now, the way Precedent works and why it's different from a lot of the other timeline tools is it lets you create different layers to group events. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you were creating a biography, an autobiography of your life, you could have one layer that shows all the jobs you've had, another layer with your relationships, another layer with your education, and you can see how all of these things line up in time. But where most timeline tools just kind of jumble it all together, it's hard to interpret. Doing it this way with different layers makes it easy to visualize, and I think that's why a lot of teachers have found it particularly useful, because you can have a timeline of a specific period in history, and you can show who like the political leaders are. You can show what different wars are going on, different milestones going around in the world, all these relationships that you wouldn't normally see because these other timeline tools don't support that kind of thing. I originally got into it because I was still at my day job and I was working on my web apps full time, kind of these two different tracks, if you will, and I wanted a way to visualize that. So I looked at the other timeline tools out there. I didn't really like what they offered, so I decided to build this tool for myself, which I think has been a good approach, good and bad. You know, if you build a tool for yourself, you kind of know what the problem is. You have a good idea of what the solution is going to look like. But if you go down that route, and we'll talk about this with my other products, make sure you're also talking to your customers so that you aren't just building something for yourself that's this niche case nobody else is going to want. So
Right. Well, and I had no idea that timelines were of interest to people. To be honest, I've got a timeline on Facebook. They forced me to do it. I didn't even know why I needed a timeline. How many users per month do you have on Precedent.com?
So right now I'm getting about 25,000 visitors a month on
Wow.
Precedent. Yeah, and we're generating something like 150,000 page views, and I get about 10% of those sign up and create an account, and then about 5% of those will wind up upgrading and paying.
5% of the
Now that's
10%.
5% of the 10%. Yes.
Gotcha.
Well, and that's going to change because I just switched to this software as a service model. So I've in the past, when I was just charging once for people to use it, I was looking at a conversion rate usually between 3 and 5%. So of the people that signed up, about 1 in 20 were upgrading, paying me $39 to upgrade. Now, once you move to a software as a service model, your conversion rates are going to drop some. It would seem like maybe it won't drop that much because I'm charging about a third of the price that I was. And if you only need to use it for a short time, that might make it more appealing, right? But I've found that people are less willing to sign up for a subscription service because for whatever reason they're maybe worried they're going to forget about it, or maybe they think because they're signing up monthly that they do need to use it long term, which is not the case. But so now instead of that 3 to 5% conversion, I'm looking at something between 0.5 and 1% conversion, which is about standard, I think, with software as a service models.
Yeah.
But I've dropped the number of people paying, but I'm also increasing the lifetime value of those people because they'll be staying with it longer. So we'll see long term how the math works out, but I'm optimistic that long term I'll wind up making more money by charging monthly than I was charging once, even though I will have had people paying once.
And I see that Precedent is free to use for 10 days, and then it costs $14 per month to continue using it. So how do you decide how long the trial is going to be, and how do you decide how much you charge per month? It seems completely arbitrary to me. It could be $5 a month. It could be $15 a month. You picked 14.
It is a little bit arbitrary, and something I'm going to be doing is tweaking those numbers. So I chose 10 days just because I wanted people to really get into the service, add a lot of content, see how it benefited them before asking them to pay. If they're not going to be using it for more than 10 days, I don't really want to charge them to use it. I mean, I could make some money there, but I think there's more value in getting people to use the service, really seeing how it can benefit them in whatever project they're working on. And then if they do want to use it long term, then they can pay me. As far as the $14 a month goes, admittedly, that was a little bit arbitrary. $20 a month seemed a little bit high. I mean, that works out to $240 a year. Which I think is a little bit much for a timeline tool. At the same time, something like $5 a month, I think it would be hard to make a significant amount of money by charging $5 or $9 a month. So $14 it was.
So that's the kind of thing that you can A/B test or ABC test. You can put it at $4.99, you can put it at $19.99 or $9.99, and then you can leave it at $14 and see over the course of a month how many people are signing up, how many people are renewing, and then look at the lifetime value and the sentiment that you're getting on Twitter or Facebook or what have you along with that, and make your decision with that data.
And so I've actually found that a lot more people are signing up now than they were before because I think they're not dissuaded. Before, you could only add 5 events to your timeline. So it was enough to try it out and see what it was about, but you couldn't really create a good timeline with it by only adding 5 things to it. But now you can try it out for 10 days without restrictions. You can add as many things to it as you'd like. So if you're a student and you have a project that you need to make for your history class, before you could sign up, but you couldn't really create that timeline using my tool. Now you can sign up, create that timeline, and be done with it. So I think people are much people are signing up more now because it's not limited like it was before. But again, now my whole business model has changed, and we'll see. Maybe it's not going to work out. Maybe I will have been better off charging $39 once instead of the 10-day trial plus $14. So we'll see.
Right. And are you going to tell us when you learn that lesson, Matt, whether it should have been changed or not changed? Are you going to post that onto mattmazur.com?
I almost definitely will, because I think that's something that a lot of people could benefit from.
Yes,
a lot of people might be in the same spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have development plans in place for both Lean Domain Search and Precedent.com, future features and functionality that you know you want to add over time to enhance the functionality of the website?
So if you haven't gotten it by now, I'm like a developer at heart, right? I like building stuff. And one of the hardest things for me transitioning to doing this full time and trying to make a business out of it is to get out of that building mindset. So instead of opening up my text editor and start typing code to improve some features, I'm trying to transition away from that and market the stuff that I have better, instead of just adding on new features, which can go on indefinitely. So for example, Lean Domain Search, it's a pretty robust tool. It's pretty good. I think moving forward, I'm probably going to be spending 80% of my time marketing it and 20% of the time building it, because that's really what I need to do to turn this into a business.
Definitely. All right. Let's talk about the two websites that you've decided to close down. One of them is called leandesigns.com and one of them called lucidtracker.com. Can you give a one-sentence summary of what these two websites did or do?
Yeah, sure. Lean Designs is a web-based web design tool, so you can go in there and create a website by dragging stuff onto the screen, and then you click a button and it gives you all the HTML and CSS necessary to generate that web page. Lucid Tracker is a daily life tracking tool. So there's a large group of people that, maybe not large, but there's a group of people that like tracking things that are going on throughout their day, like how much they've slept, maybe what they've ate, whether they've exercised. And the idea is that by tracking it, you kind of become accountable for it, and you can improve those things over time.
Right.
So especially if you have a lot of things going on in your life, something like Lucid Tracker makes it pretty easy to track all that and see trends and make improvements.
And both of those seem like great tools. In fact, I've thought about using tools like Lucid Tracker before to track things like how much sleep I get, how much reading I do per day, how many times I, walk the dog in a week or what have you, because you can't improve what you don't measure. And so measurement tools like that are useful. I think there are other tools out there that do that. There are.
And the one just launched by some of the folks involved with Twitter called Lyft, which has gained some traction lately. And like you said, there's a lot of other tools out there like that too. But for both of these tools, the devil is in the details. So for Lean Designs, for example, my goal with that was to kind of compete with Photoshop. Because a lot of web designers use Photoshop to design websites before they go and code them, because it can save them a lot of time doing it that way.
Right.
And so my idea was, Photoshop is not this web design tool. Maybe I can build this tool that's just for web design, and it will also generate the web page for you. Wouldn't that be great? So I went and built this thing. I spent probably about a year working on it, and I kind of realized at the end of it that I had this big problem, because beginners, people who don't have any web design skills, are not going to be able to drag and drop a bunch of stuff onto a page and make a good-looking website. They don't have design skills, which is why they're using a tool like this. So they're not going to be able to make something that looks good. And then it generates this HTML and CSS, and they're not going to know what to do with it because they're beginners. So beginners aren't a good market. So then maybe you look at like the professional designers. Well, Lean Designs is good, but most professional designers are already comfortable using Photoshop, and you can pry Photoshop from their dead hands, right? Because they're comfortable with that. It's very flexible, and they can do what they want with it. And also, they're going to want to code the site by hand. They're not going to want this auto-generated HTML and CSS.
Or they're going to be using a content management system to structure the whole website to look similar.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of wound up with this Frankenstein tool that it's like technically it works and you can go to it and create a web page, but how can you charge for something that beginners aren't going to use and experts aren't going to use, and there's not really a medium ground in there. Maybe there is, but I decided after looking at it and trying to make it work that it would take too much reworking, too much marketing to do it. So I'm electing to shut it down. It's actually shutting down next week. End of an era. A little sad too because I couldn't make it work. But
and how many customers are on leandesigns.com right now?
I was charging originally, and I moved away from that because I wasn't getting a lot of people to sign up, and I wanted to encourage people to give me more feedback. So my idea with this at the time was to make it free, which is debatable whether that was a good idea or not. But the number of people who've signed up is somewhere around 3,000. I don't know how many of those are active right now. I'm guessing not that many because I do have this big banner saying that we're shutting down.
Right.
And like I said, there's problems to begin with. Are people who signing up going to be using it long term? The data says no, they're not going to be. So.
All right, what about Lucid Tracker? That seems like something that a lot of people that are on lifehacker.com want to do, or, as you mentioned, the founders of Twitter are creating themselves something similar to that. Why did that idea not work?
So, like you said, you hear this idea and you're like, man, that seems like a really good idea. I want to try that. And so, for example, I launched it and I had something like 800 signups in the first day. So I was like, oh my God, maybe this could really take off. But then, so 800 people used it on the first day. On the second day, of those 800, 400 people continued using it. After the third day, 200 people used it. And after a month, I had about 10 people out of those 800 using it still. And I was trying to charge for it too, and of those 10 people, nobody was willing to pay for it. So, so it's like this interesting tool, and people are like, yeah, this seems really interesting, but challenge is getting them to pay for it and getting them to use it long term. And if you can't do either one of those, it's very hard to turn it into a business. So again, it's a neat tool, and there were people using it when I elected to shut it down and put this announcement up that I'm shutting it down, and they were upset, but nobody was like sending me angry emails demanding that I keep it up, which kind of gives you an idea. It's like this nice to have fun little tool, but it's not something I'm going to get people paying a lot of money for. It's not something that I'm ever going to be able to turn into a business. So now it wasn't really costing me anything to keep it running, either site. And so I debated for a long time, why not just keep these two sites running? Maybe something will happen down the road where I can turn it into a sustainable business. Maybe they'll want to be picked up Lifehacker or TechCrunch or who knows what. But it's really hard to develop and market many different projects at once. When you're working on it in your spare time, it doesn't really matter how much money you're making. You're just kind of doing it for fun. But as soon as you start depending on that revenue, and you do have to do a lot of marketing, it's very hard to do that across many things. And there could even be an argument to be made that I should only focus on one thing instead of two. But luckily, the two things that I am sticking with are bringing in money. So I'm electing to shut down the other two things so that I can focus on the things that are making money. And I think that's going to be a good long-term decision, even though, like I said, it's a little bit painful now. But
yeah, definitely. What if somebody's watching this show, Matt, and they're like, oh, I love that idea. I want to buy that website and domain name off of you. Would you be willing to sell either of them?
Yes, send me an email, matt@leandomainsearch.com.
All right. So either of those, if those are of interest to you, and I'm sure the websites are going to be down by that point, but maybe you'll just, leave the homepage up so people can look at them if they are interested, if they think they want to try and make a viable business out of it. What would you say is the one thing that you should have done prior to starting work on either of those business ideas?
So like I said, I kind of built these to solve my own problems. The lean designs with the web design, which I was learning at the time, and Lucid Tracker to do this daily life tracking thing. So I built them to solve my own problem, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so much more than that to turn it into a business. You need to make sure that you have a very specific audience in mind. For example, with lean designs, if you had asked me whether I was building this for beginners or professionals, I would have been like both. But you can't build a tool for both. You really need to pick a narrow audience and talk to those people. Mm-hmm. Tell them what you're working on. Ask them if it's something they'd be willing to pay for. Because otherwise you run this risk that you spend a lot of time, like I did, building something, but you made assumptions along the way, and those assumptions turn out not to be true. Mm-hmm. And you'll spend a year working on it and launch. Don't spend a year working on it and launch, by the way. Do it much quicker than that. But you'll wind up wasting a lot of time. So talk to your customers. Validate your assumptions and make sure that there's going to be a good way to make money if that's your goal.
Yeah. Now, I noticed a couple of your websites use the word lean in it. Were you influenced by Lean Startup by Eric Ries, or were you influenced by lean manufacturing principles that you learned in the Air Force? What's the what's the use of lean so much in the domains?
Yeah, the lean was influenced by the Lean Startup movement, and for those of you not familiar with it, it's this idea that you shouldn't spend a year working on something in your basement without talking to anybody. You should talk to customers, make sure the thing that you're building is going to solve their problem, and then get something out there very, very quickly to validate those assumptions and start getting real feedback from your customers. So that's kind of the Lean Startup movement in a nutshell, if you will. So I was heavily influenced by that. And so Lean Designs, which came before Lean Domain Search, I was trying to piggyback on that idea where you could design this website very quickly, get it out there, get feedback from your clients or whoever. And so I like the name, piggyback on the Lean Startup movement. Sure. And it's a web design tool, Lean Designs. Lean Domain Search, similar idea where I was creating this simple domain search tool, and so Lean seemed like a good way to go since I had just done it with Lean Designs, and sure. That's how those names came to be.
Great. All right, I've got a business idea for you to pivot on, and I hate that word pivot, to pivot on leandesigns.com. I think it might work, so I'm going to share that with you right after the show here, Matt. So I want to ask you a final question. Wayne Nelson, our producer, who spoke to you before the show and asked you a bunch of questions, did a lot of research on mattmazur.com, mattmazur.com, which is your personal blog, and he found an interesting story called the Poker Bot story. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and what lessons you learned?
So in college, I got into online poker and made some good money there, but my developer side kind of took over at some point and said, maybe I can build this tool that will play for me, and then I could just leave it on and not even have to play and just make money that way. So I got into that. Took a while to build. From the time I started working on it to the time that it was profitable and eventually shut down, I probably spent about 2 years on it. So I spent quite a while on it. I eventually got it to the point where it was profitable. It took a while. Turns out it's hard to build a poker bot, but so I spent a lot of time on it. I learned more about Texas Hold'em than I ever wanted to know, but so kind of at the end of it, I spent 2 years on this thing. It wound up getting shut down by the site I was running it on. Like I said, I got it to the point where it's profitable and was like, hey, this is easy money. So I left it on probably a little bit longer than I should have. I probably exceeded some normal limits, and eventually my account was shut down, and that was the end of my poker bot. Now, I could have maybe created another account, but I was kind of ready to move on at that point. So I was thinking about what I want to do next. I just spent these 2 years working on this poker bot. What do I have to show for it? It's not like you can put on a resume, I built a poker bot. I mean, I guess you can, but it's a very limited skill set that you're learning by building something like that, and it wasn't applicable to a lot of the other stuff that I had in mind. So I decided that if I was going to work on something anymore, it would be something that other people would use, and something that where I could learn new stuff, and that would hopefully produce long-term good results. And so that's kind of what actually inspired me to get into startups, because I wanted to. I figured if I'm going to be working on something for so long, it might as well be something that is legitimate, if you will. That's kind of how I got into poker, how I got into startups from my online poker days.
Yeah.
I've written a lot about it on the blog, how it worked, and I've got screenshots from when it got caught by the site, and some exchanges I had with the online poker site, and they were good times. They were good times.
Well, I love that. You're going to class and you're making money while you're at class. Like, what could be better than that?
Yep. So, but it's tricky too, and kind of like people are like, maybe you want to work on another project right now. I've got these 2 or 4 projects. Maybe you want to work on something else, but it takes a lot of time to get a new project off the ground, and every minute you spend working on a new project is one that you could have been spent working on another one.
Right.
And so that was kind of like the poker bot. Like, I spent these 2 years of nights and weekends working on this. But what if I had spent that working on a startup? Maybe I'd be 2 years ahead of where I am right now. And I think, like I said, a good experience, but if I could go back and kind of talk to my younger self, I'd say, maybe skip the poker bot, work on something, work on a business, work on learning marketing and startups and Ruby on Rails and things like that. So live and learn, I guess.
Live and learn. Although I would argue that you did learn, a lot about artificial intelligence, about interacting, automating computer systems, about a lot of different things. And I'm not sure if you use Ruby on Rails as the framework for the poker bot, but I see an awesome, an awesome little icon and little dude on that website that'll allow you to sign up. And but a fantastic story. If you have a follow-up question, please post it in the comments below, and we'll ask Matt to come back and share more insights with you. If you'd like to follow Matt Mazur and Lightstone Software, you can do so. You're on Twitter, right, Matt?
Twitter, MHMazur.
MHMazur. MAZUR. All right. Matt Mazur, Lightstone Software and developer of LeanDomainSearch.com. Thank you for coming on the show, sharing your development knowledge, and thank you for being a domain Sherpa for others.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.